On this episode of Money and Power, we talk about flashy tassels, Chinese butt pains, and can't we all just get along? But first, Kid Inc.
I got the money and the power. Yeah. Once you get a little, they just want to take you down, cuz we've been going hard for too long. Can't get enough what is you on. Yeah. Really ain't nothing I could drop that. Wake up in the morning, make it all day. It's nothing to get it poppin', wanna roll up.
Welcome to episode 20 of Money and Power, our weekly look at questions related to finance, politics, and culture. I'm your host, Nathan Martin, and joining me from North Carolina, a prolific bartender, an Anglican priest, and a great friend of the show, Jay Traylor.
Hi there.
And joining me in studio here in the crown jewel of rural Ohio, a general purveyor of nonsense, Jeremiah Martin.
I'm present and accounted for.
So together, we are, I guess, still a trio talk, a triad of the tittle-tattle, and the triumvirate of the tete-a-tete, albeit not quite whole. As you noticed, Rob is not joining us. He had some work emergencies and such, so he wasn't able to join us. So we asked a good friend of ours to step in. So, Jay, we're thrilled to have you on the show.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
So there's a lot of times Jeremiah and I or Rob will at one point say, we don't always agree. And then inevitably we generally agree on everything we talk about. Even we try to even come up with like Jeremiah is really good at this. He tries to come up with a hot take to try to get like Rob, and what's Rob's response?
Yeah, I try and give him the business, and he always ends up just coming around to my point. He's like, fair point. I'm like, Rob, you're being too reasonable here.
In other words, it would be a horrible cable TV show or a horrible show on ESPN. We wouldn't make it.
Even when we did we only did it once because it was kind of a flop. But when we did our at me bro segment, it was kind of like, we disagree on what the best television series is. Moving on.
It was pretty rough. Anyways, so I say all that to say that we have brought on a lifetime Democrat. I think I can out you on that. But anyways, he is he self-describes himself as politically liberal but theologically conservative. And I'm going to get into a little bit later, actually, because it kind of talks about our main subject. But I'm going to talk a little bit how we met, but it's a little bit interesting. Anyway, so he's going to have a different viewpoint. And it's not to say that we won't agree on some stuff, because it's amazing. You can actually have different viewpoints and actually agree and kind of middle ground. But it will be nice to take advantage of that and get your vantage point. So we're really pleased to have you, man.
I appreciate that. Thanks for inviting me on. And hopefully I'll be able to fill the shoes of Rob and have Jeremiah try to take a different point of view from me, and then eventually I'll just come around to his.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And always, we want to foster an atmosphere of rational discourse, and even where we do agree, maybe on some really hot button issues, hopefully we can come out of it and still be friends, and me and Nathan, not be estranged brothers. That's kind of the goal.
That is. Absolutely. So yeah, my mom is constantly worried about that. And I mean, she has no reason to be worried. It's not as if that we had a fist fight in a steakhouse waiting area on Mother's Day.
That only happened once, so that seems like a pretty good record.
Please tell me this was recent.
Yeah,
no.
That was in May. Yeah.
I was married though, and Jeremiah was in high school, middle school, maybe. I can't remember. I can't do the math in my head real quick. I don't think you were younger than that. Anyways, so it was. My mom was crying out in the car. My wife was absolutely pissed at me. It was good times. Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Yeah, dare I say Nathan started it, but I finished it. So
So wrong. It's so inaccurate. So inaccurate. I try to put water under the bridge, but he keeps on just burning the mother down. All right.
So this is going to be the episode where we actually do become estranged brothers, and it's because we brought Jay on, but it actually has nothing to do with it.
I'm glad I got a front row seat for this.
Welcome to episode 20, everybody. All right, so now it is time for our look back at the weird, the inane, and the general happenings going on in the world by the crazy people who happen to live here. News Bits.
News bits. Show me your bits of news.
All right. Such a bad jingle. Anyways, Jay, your inaugural news bit. What you got?
So, Tiger Woods got in a little bit of trouble this week from a couple ESPN hosts for presumably, or they said, backing Donald Trump. From ABC 15, a pair of ESPN hosts were critical of Tiger Woods on Monday after Woods' comments about his relationship with President Trump. Asked on Sunday how he'd respond to people who are intrigued by his friendly relationship with Trump, Woods, a friend and sometime partner of Trump, told reporters he's the president of the United States, and you have to respect the office. And no matter who's in the office, you may like, dislike, personality, politics, but we all must respect the office. Now, people had problem with this because they said he should have called out Trump on one of several issues. He had a platform. He was asked a question, and he just said something totally kind of anodyne and sterile and middle of the road. And a couple things came up when I was thinking about this. One, did you expect anything else from Tiger Woods? The guy has, since 1998, basically made a career out of saying things that are anodyne and sterile and middle of the road. And I actually respect him for this. One of the reasons that I wanted to do this story is because Tiger Woods is my favorite athlete of my lifetime. I'm a golfer. I've always loved golf, and I've loved watching Tiger Woods play golf for the last 20 years. So I don't think that, as much as I love watching Tiger golf, I don't think I would ever turn to him for either political insight or championing a cause. It's not what he does, and it's not who he is. And the more I was thinking about this, it occurred to me that the only time that we call out people, the only time that we call out athletes, the only time that we call out entertainers for doing something is when it's taking a viewpoint that's different from ours. And that's, whether it's, they should have said more or, they should say less. It's only ever, we do it not based on what the role of their job is, but based on what they said. And that's frustrating.
Yeah, I completely agree, and we've talked about this a little bit before on like celebrity culture and that kind of stuff. And man, his comments were very neutral.
Yeah,
and they weren't just neutral, right? It wasn't as if he's just said, "Hey, Donald Trump could be a good guy, could not be a good guy. Doesn't matter to me. I just enjoy playing golf with the guy." Like he basically came up with the line that essentially we've all been taught forever and ever and ever. I mean, I remember when Bill Clinton was president, and I said something pejorative towards President Clinton, and I was not gracious, let's say, in my tone. My dad stopped me and said, "Listen, he's still the president.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to respect the office. We may not respect the man, but we respect the office, and we pray for those that are in the office." And I had just it just came across my time hop actually. It was I think it was 2013. We were having a lesson with my kids, and I had posted on Facebook about this lesson, and I said, I stopped my kids because they were saying Obama, and I said it's President Obama, and I said it maybe seemed like a little thing. I said, but I still taught them that we respect the office, even though we disagree with the person who is in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And for people to call him out because he was basically taking a civil line, I don't. I'm just like I'm blown away at where we've come.
I am too, and yes, you're absolutely right. He wasn't equivocating. He didn't make some mealy mouth statement, whether he intended to or not. He ended up saying something that every good citizen should be able to say, and that it's possible that never existed. It's possible that it's only always been an ideal, but it needs to be the ideal, and it needs to be championed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think if there is one thing that is more 2018 than just about anything that I've experienced recently, it is this story. Because something as factual as the fact that he's our president is essentially controversial for some reason. I was at an event recently where Congressman Jim Jordan was speaking, and he was talking about a committee hearing that he was in where there was a university professor, and they were talking about, safe spaces and free speech zones, etc. And he asked the question, Congressman Jordan asked the question to this university professor and said, if someone were to say this statement in a free speech zone on a college campus, would it be, or excuse me, in a safe space on a college campus, would it be acceptable? Donald Trump is president. And the university professor kind of struggled and said, well, it depends. I mean, this is where we're at in 2018, where you need a safe space to even admit the fact that Donald Trump is our president. Now, granted, that sounds like a wild thing if you're, in even early 2016, but we're in 2018 now. He's been president for nearly 2 years, and it is a fact. And I mean, in my opinion, he didn't say anything wild or crazy yet. This is where we're at in our rational discourse, and it's one of the reasons we want to do this show and talk about things like this.
Yeah, and so I obviously have been in politics a while, right? And I've said this before, and I'm completely honest, and it's not ironic or anything. I say, listen, if President Obama had called me up in 2010 or 2012 or 2013 and said, we have a position in the White House, we would like you to apply, we think your talents would benefit the nation in this thing. I don't know if I take the job, but I take the meeting.
Yeah, of course you would.
And I go hear him out, and I go visit him at the White House. And why do I do that? Because the president has asked me to serve the country. Mm-hmm. And I take that meeting. That's a no-brainer to me. The president, it doesn't matter who the president is. The president has asked me to serve the country in a capacity they feel my talents are beneficial. And so just like that, I don't blame anybody for serving in the Trump administration. I have a lot of friends who are serving in the Trump administration. I have friends who were pretty much almost never Trumpers. Not quite, but close. And disagree with them on practically every issue. But why are they serving? And they say, I'm not serving the president per se, I'm serving the country.
Yes.
I'm using my talents to serve the country, and we've just completely lost that to where if you are in the administration, you can get kicked out of a restaurant, you can be attacked on the street. If you're in any way associated at all, it is mind-numbing. Now, it's not to say that we on the Republican side, that we treated people in the Obama administration with a whole bunch of grace either, okay? I don't recall us kicking them out of restaurants or saying, oh, I can't even stand hearing that, Obama is president, right? But it's not as if decorum and etiquette has always been strong on our side as well. We all have faults, but I haven't seen it at this level, and it's concerning.
I'm going to jump in there. Come on, Nathan. You haven't seen it at this level. The current president was the biggest backer of spreading a verifiable falsehood that the past president was constitutionally unfit for office. And yes, you didn't have college students, needing a fainting couch every time the president's name came up when President Obama was president. But certainly the level of vitriol and hate for President Obama, from what I remember, equally matched what we've got today. Now, I think what you have today is it's so fractured in terms of our ability to have any kind of civil discussion with somebody. As soon as you find out that they have a difference of opinion from you, that they have a different viewpoint from you, you shut down and everyone goes back to their corners, and we're just siloing ourselves. But I have to disagree with you. I saw the same amount of stuff under President Obama.
That's fair. And I will say this. I am willing to conflate birtherism, which, by the way, I was opposed to birtherism. In fact, I was very strong that we should treat birthers just like we treated 9/11 truthers. And they just had no place in our discourse. And yeah, I won't go any further into that. But anyways, but if you want to say yes, birtherism, it was just as stupid and deranged as Russian collusionists are, then I completely agree. I think they're both in the same vein. We're upset that somebody lost. We're upset that somebody won an election. And because they're so different from me, there's absolutely no way on earth that I can believe that they won an election fair and square. There had to have been some kind of shady something, because obviously most Americans think exactly like me.
Right.
And there's no way that there's any other explanation of why. And you know what? There's a perfectly good explanation. We ran McCain and Palin at the tail end of the Bush administration, who was very, very unpopular, and people looked at McCain as a third term of President Bush. That's not very difficult to understand. And when it comes to Hillary losing, it's not difficult to understand. Like, she didn't visit Wisconsin. She didn't enjoy campaigning, and we knew this. We knew that she didn't enjoy the really campaigning because she lost to Obama the first time around, right?
Right.
Like,
we had one candidate who didn't enjoy campaigning but really enjoyed governing and policy, and we had another candidate who really enjoyed campaigning and was good at it and really doesn't enjoy governing or policy. Yes. And it's not a surprise that the guy who was really good at campaigning and clearly enjoyed it won.
That's exactly right.
Now, I will say that, based on where I usually fall on things, I'm more predisposed to believe Russian collusionism than I was to believe birtherism. I'll admit that. But we don't, the people that I listen to, the people that I read, the fact that they continue to harp on the collusion thing, it really it comes from the same place, and I'll admit this. It comes from the same place as birtherism. And it's 2 years later, and it's still people going, I can't believe that we lost. It had to have been a fluke, because and you're exactly right. Everyone, all right-thinking people believe the same thing that I do. So it had to have been a glitch in the system. And this might transition into what we're talking about later, but the fact that we believe that means that we're losing the ability to actually engage with somebody else, because if we constantly think everyone thinks as I do, and so there's never any kind of, there's never any motivation to go, holy crap, look at all these millions and millions and millions and tens of millions of people who voted for the other guy. Maybe I can go speak with them. Maybe I can try to convince them of the rightness of my position. No, that's out the window, because we're just going to blame it on a glitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Or blame it on a it's just the way the system's obviously flawed. So
yeah,
we have to get rid of the Electoral College. The Electoral College is the reason why it is the way it is, or whatnot.
Right, and so actually kind of segueing into our next topic where we talk about how the fact that Jay is a 9/11 truther.
Not quite, but I do have a news bit. All right, so this news bit usually...
Well, he didn't deny it.
Does it involve... just do your news bit quickly.
So this also involves a pain in the butt. Usually it's Jeremiah who brings these type of news bits, but Jeremiah. So we have a thread, whatever, and I thought it was pretty obvious what news bit I was going to bring, and Jeremiah stole it. So I had to go out and find a insane one. So here we are. So a married couple.
Yeah, Jay can't handle it.
There's a married couple, and they were trying to get pregnant for 4 years. It's not unheard of. Fertility issues happen to couples. So they went to the doctor, as you're wont to do, and they were in China, from a Chinese village, obviously, as a village in China. But anyways, so they went to the doctor, and the doctor did an exam and realized the wife was still a medical virgin. The couple,
Nathan, how does that happen?
the couple had been having relations in the wrong physical location.
Nathan, you realize you're making it worse
I am.
by just
All right.
not saying anal sex.
Yes. All right. So they actually had been having for their entire married life for 2 to 3 times a week anal sex, and yeah.
Oddly enough, she didn't get pregnant.
Oddly enough, it can't happen that way.
That's almost hard to believe.
Almost. So the article goes on to say that the doctor went through some basic sex education, and happy to announce that they are now expecting a couple months after this that they started, doing things the right way.
And I would just like to point out to our audience that if your curiosity has peaked at this point, just understand that, first of all, curiosity killed the cat. And so let that be a warning to you. Do not Google this. There is no combination of words that you can Google to actually get to this article without getting to unintended consequences. So I would just say, trust us that this is a real news bit, and Nathan's not yanking your chain. So.
Yeah, you don't want. Yeah, don't go down that Google. So yeah, I wonder how the journalist with a straight face could say, "Oh, the happy couple," and now is like, no, they're actually having a child now. I mean, how do you screw that up? Like, I don't.
The journalist. I want to know how the doctor. I want to know what that doctor's visit was like when he had to break the news to them.
Oh yeah, he's like,
guys.
Oh, wow, you were saying that intercourse was painful the entire time. This makes a lot more sense. I'm like, I don't know.
What if in an odd plot twist, the baby ends up not being the father's?
Jerry. Anyways, I don't know. So for all those who feel that the Chinese are definitively going to take over the world, not that village. Not that village. That is basically the Chinese equivalent of Lower Alabama. That region. I don't know what region it is. Basically Mississippi.
It's the Chinese version of Greece, I think.
Oh.
I'll wait. I'll just wait.
Oh. Okay. Anyways, that's my news bit. All right, Jeremiah, get the train on track.
There's really no way to segue from that. So this past week we had some somber news. And New York Times had a really good write-up on this. John S. McCain, the proud naval aviator who climbed from the depths of despair as a prisoner of war in Vietnam to pinnacles of power as a Republican congressman and senator from Arizona and a two-time contender for the presidency, died on Saturday at his home in Arizona. He was 81. So this has just been all over the news cycle. If you haven't seen this, then I don't know where you've been. But it's just dominated the news cycle, and I'm just going to go ahead and segue right into our main segment because we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about this. But it's dominated the news cycle, but not only that, if your timelines are anything like ours, it's probably dominated your Facebook, your Twitter timelines as well. And frankly, what we're going to talk about is decorum, and we're going to talk about kind of how to wade through these waters. Because, frankly, from my perspective, I'll just speak for myself. A lot of what I saw on Facebook and Twitter related to Senator McCain's death was honestly disturbing. You had some people, immediately saying, he's a war hero. And then, the next post down is actually he's a warmonger and he's this and he's that and he's a traitor and he's an enemy of the United States. And then the next one is something positive. The next one is something negative. And it's just incredible highs and incredible lows. And obviously in anything, when it comes to death and end of life, and especially the way the way he went out with battling cancer for over the last year, and ultimately choosing to end treatment. There's just a lot of emotions related to this. And frankly, we've got a lot of different opinions on John McCain as the man, as the veteran, as the congressman, as the senator, as the presidential nominee. We all have varying views on that, and so Nathan, I'll pass it to you. And how do we wade through these waters as it relates to decorum, or what have you seen this past week?
I haven't seen much good. I think decorum and political civility are so important. And we talk about this often, and gosh, I don't even know anymore. We always say that we're for rational discourse. But it's very hard to have rational discourse with irrational people. And what we see in social media and stuff is that we have so much irrationality that we're always looking at the bad in other people. We're looking at the negative motives in other people, especially if they're assigned a label. So sometimes that label is Democrat, sometimes that label is liberal, sometimes that label is rhino or moderate or whatever it is. And because of that, we don't feel that we can feel any empathy for that person or sympathy for that person. And that is a very, very dangerous place to be. Because if you can't find empathy or sympathy for somebody, then you are never going to treat them like you want to be treated, first of all. But also, you're never going to fully see them and their humanity, how God intended their humanity to be. I kind of saw this coming because I remember when it was announced that he had brain cancer. And my timeline was, I want to say, 100%, but there was enough of it of, this couldn't happen soon enough. Yeah. Oh, we can finally get back Goldwater's seat. Okay, whatever. I just, and so it's like, seriously? And then the attacks on Meghan McCain.
Yeah.
And it's just, even if you completely dislike Meghan, she just lost her father. She just lost her father. You can't bear down and just shut up for 24 hours, 48 hours, right? Like it's like the classic line: if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Like just shut the hell up.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much just to not post.
Right. It takes no effort to not do something.
Yeah. But I have been struck by a couple things, and one thing, Jeremiah, we were talking about this. One thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way as well, and I know you had mentioned it, is that everyone feels that even if they offer up condolences about McCain, they feel like they have to have a caveat,
Right.
of I didn't agree with everything he said, but rest in peace. As opposed to what I posted, and again, it's not that I'm perfect here, but I just posted, listen, rest in peace to an American hero. That's it. I didn't feel the need to provide a caveat of I didn't agree with him on every issue because it's pretty well documented where I disagree with Senator McCain. It's also pretty well documented where I agree wholeheartedly with him at. But what I've never disagreed with is the fact that he's an American hero who went through hell for 5.5 years, and that changed him.
Well, and not only that, but denied the opportunity to be released to maintain with his troops. I'm not going to be released so that you can use this as rhetoric against my country when I'm being released, but no one else is, and maintained in that hellhole of a situation. So there's certain things. Number one, there's certain things that really there's not much to argue about, and that I personally I think that's one of them. That at the very least, he valiantly served his country in wartime. At the very least, I think that's something that we can all agree on. And everything else, and this goes back to something that we've talked about in the past, and this is attributing motive to people. I think that it's really important to understand, and maybe some people would disagree with me, but I think that even where there were disagreements between myself and Senator McCain, whether it be on the campaign trail, presidential campaign trail, whether it be in Senate or whatnot, even where we have differences, I don't think there was ever a moment that I doubted his motivations behind what he did, and that he had a heart to serve our country, both in the military as well as civilian service. And I see a lot of that right now. It's just attributing motive that he did these things. He disagreed with me. He voted against this because he's a terrible person or because he did that. And that is such a dangerous place to go down. And I find myself having these conversations with Republican versus Democrat. Is we disagree on policies maybe, but I don't think that we should go down the rabbit hole of their intent. And trying to attribute motive to them. What do you think in all this, Jay?
Well, all right. I want to start by saying I probably I come at this from a different area of the playing field than you two do, and I also want to be. Right. I want to tread lightly because I'm very conscious of the fact that I am on a show with two military veterans, and we're talking about a war hero and a prisoner of war. I never served. And so that's, I want to make sure I tread lightly. For me, McCain was always the guy that we liked. He was the Republican that we liked because he was the one who was willing to have conversations with people who disagreed with him. He was the one who was willing to make deals. He was the one who was willing to do what I believe, and I'm not a constitutionalist by any stretch of the imagination, but he's the one who was willing to do a lot of what the Senate is supposed to do, which is 100 people get together and try to do stuff for the country. And there are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who are absolutely unwilling to do that. And so he was the one that we liked. And so it was shocking to me when when he died, and I started to see, no matter where I was looking, I started to see such vitriol for him. But the really surprising part is where it came from, because from it was from the far left, but it was also, and I didn't expect this, it was also from the hard right. And there was so much, and I believe that, it's because he opposed President Trump and he was too much of a moderate and too much of a deal maker and blah blah blah. But just the amount of bile for this guy who he just died. And yes, he didn't die a young man. He died at a reasonably old age, but he still died. And the man's dead. Can you just say, rest in peace? Can you just, at the very least, like you said, at the very least, can you just say, thank you for your service to this country, rest in peace? And the people, the amount of people that couldn't seem to do that was shocking to me. So, I remember very specifically the famous moment in the 2008 campaign in the town hall shortly before the election, with the woman who stood up and said, "I don't trust Obama. He's an Arab. And McCain cut him off, and no, ma'am. He's a good family man who I just happen to have disagreements with." And I remember, I can't remember whether I happened to be watching or whether I just saw it the next morning, but I saw that moment, and that was the moment that I went, oh, okay, now I don't care which one of them wins. Now I'm going to be very happy if either one of them win, because that shows me that he's a person of substance. And the fact that level of decorum and civility is so rare, is really the shame of all this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, there's a difference. I think we need to be clear. There's a distinction between hindsight, looking back after the fact, and I would say well after the fact, and kind of looking at what is this individual's, what did they add to our history? What was their historical impact? I think that's a different conversation, something that should be saved for, like I said, much after the fact. That's a conversation that we can have about Reagan, about Ford, about Roosevelt. That's conversations that we're constantly having, and I think those conversations need to be had. But the day after, or the day of the death, I don't think that's the time. I think that's the time for decorum. I think that's the time for respect. Even going back to our very first topic of the night, maybe we don't respect the man, maybe we didn't like the man, but do we at the very least respect his service, respect both military and civilian? Do we respect his role? Do we respect the office that he held? And at the very least, do we respect his family and what they're going through? And that's something that I haven't seen a lot of this week.
So I was at a veterans event a while back, and it's probably been 2007 time frame. Anyways, I was speaking to a congressman, and I asked him, kind of half jokingly, I was like, how can you deal with some of these idiots on the other side of the aisle? And I probably said it that way. Probably not quite that generous, actually. But anyways. And I actually was pretty impressed with his response. And he said, they have constituents too. And they have people who voted them to serve them. They're definitely not the people who voted me in to serve, for me to serve. But they're elected, and they're here to do a job just like I'm here to do a job. And I guarantee you that sometimes they're looking over at the other side at me and saying, man, how did that buffoon get elected too? And it was kind of a refreshing refreshing moment of, you know what? At the end of the day, these people in Congress are people. They're humans who have been chosen to serve their country, and they're trying to do what they feel is best. Now, I will say that discourse has changed. I think that on both sides that we promote radical ideology over actually getting things done and accomplished. And it is not to say that there aren't insignificant differences between the parties. I think there are significant differences in vantage points. So for every alt-right person on our end, there's socialists on the other end. So it's like,
I absolutely agree. Let me just jump in for a second. I absolutely agree with you, and I feel like more and more the last 2 years, you've got the hard left and you've got the alt right, and then you've got what I will uncharitably call the grown-ups, and that's the establishment right and the establishment left. And it's up to somebody to try to change the conversation, to try to change the tone and tenor of what's going on. And I don't think it's going to be my super lefty liberal friends, and I don't think it's going to be the Breitbarts of the world. I think it's going to be people who realize that half the country voted one way, half the country voted the other, but we all got to live here.
Well, let me say this too, just to piggyback right off of that, Jay.
By the way, I'm enjoying playing kind of the David Frum role here, where I just come on and bash my own people and try to get cred for it. So I love David Frum.
Oh, very good. No, you mentioned earlier that the main critiques of John McCain in his passing were from the far left and far right, and not a whole lot in the middle. And I'd say I agree with that. What I've seen on my timeline, but then the interesting thing that even my conservative friends that post something benign or post something are fairly benign, rest in peace, he was a war hero, or I met him once and he was a great guy, rest in peace, prayers to the family, that type of thing. Not only do you see this left and right dynamic, but then those people that do come out and say something charitable, then they are decried as the in a pejorative sense, the moderates. It's like well, and if the people, they would be conservative, or even some of my progressive friends would have said something like that. But then they're decried as the moderate. You're too moderate because you're willing to say something charitable about this individual. And once again, I mean, it's just a problem. I don't. Part of my frustration in all this is I don't know what the fix is. Because a couple years ago, my friends on the right were blaming everything on Obama, and now everything's being blamed on Trump. Mm-hmm. And there's really I don't see a lot of places for rational discourse. I don't see a lot of places for this decorum. And frankly, you brought this up earlier, Jay, and I agree. We've seen it from our own president. We've seen it from Trump supporters. We've seen it, this lack of decorum. We've seen it over and over again. Nathan and I specifically try and call it out where we see it. But it's a problem, and I don't always know where to go from here.
Well, if you spend your whole existence trying to own other people, right?
Yeah.
If you spend your whole existence trying to own other people on social media,
right,
then there's no point in a charitable view, because then you're not owning someone. You're actually being, a decent human being,
right,
and not a stuck-up prick or someone who's petty.
Yeah.
putting the flag at half staff for a day, but then throwing it back up there when every other flag is at half staff. Just prove your pettiness. That's petty. And when the American Legion has to beg you to put it back to half staff and finally you acquiesce, that's petty. That's flat out being a petty person and, frankly, a prick. But, you know what? His supporters love that, and by his supporters, I mean, the Trumpsters or whatever you want to call it, right? The people are just diehard, and
the MAGA hats.
Yeah, I don't. I blame a lot of it on. If I can go a little biblical, but I'm like.
Oh, good. I was about to, but you.
I'm going to betwixt two pastors here, so. A priest and an ordained minister, and then me. And I'm the one that brings up the Bible first. Look at that. It's either building your house on the rock or house on the sand. Mm-hmm. And if your foundation is built on sand, then you are constantly at the direction and being cast to and fro by other forces. But if your house is built on a foundation, then you're not. And you're able to navigate the waters that are surrounding you with steady and calm. And so you don't feel the need for these knee-jerk reactions. And so in a political sense, it's a matter of a lot of us don't even know what we believe. I mean, this goes for Democrats, this goes for Republicans, liberals, whatever. A lot of people don't even know what they believe. A lot of people aren't even smart enough, Jay, to understand, you know what, I might be politically liberal, but I'm actually theologically conservative. They just think, conservative is a dirty word, so I'm not, I have to be progressive in all life, whatever.
Sure. Or they think that all Democrats are communists, that it's a synonym.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So, listen, in my life, I've been guilty of that. But what helped that was life changes, right? So I went from living in Nebraska, which is a different political climate, to living in Minnesota, right? And listen, if you're in Minnesota and you think that Democrats are, how in the world are you a Democrat and a Christian, right? Mm-hmm. That was the first time I actually had to reconcile that, because I had Christian friends who were Democrats. Mm-hmm. Like how in the world do you reconcile that?
Right.
But then I moved down to Tennessee, and it's like, okay, well, no, this is completely, and actually down in Tennessee it was even worse, because in Minnesota you would have Democrats who were Christians, but it was kind of whatever. But then down in Tennessee you have Southern Democrats, and they are pretty much Democrats in name only, like. Their grandpa, their great-grandpa, whatever, they're a Democrat, but they are solidly on all your issues. And it's like, how in the world? Like, what is the reconciliation here?
Right. What definition are you using? How are you sorting yourself this way? How are you engaging with what other people who claim to be the same as you believe?
Right. And so my point in all that is that we just don't know what we believe. We don't know what we believe theologically. We don't know what we believe politically. And so we are just at the beck and call of what Facebook post has the most likes, what's going to give us the most attention, what's going to be the most popular, and that goes for everyone across the board. And then what happens then, Jay, when we go to the voting booth? We get the people that we deserve.
Yeah.
And I've said this over and over again. We are a republic. That means that we have the people that we deserve. You hate Congress? You think that they have an 8% approval rating? Well, you know what? I guarantee your Facebook has 8% approval rating, what's getting posted on there. And I guarantee you Twitter has 8% approval. It all meshes. People act like it's separate. Oh, those evil people in D.C. Well, you know what? Who put them there?
Right.
We did. So when most people and their households don't have an operational budget on a month-to-month basis, are we shocked then that our Congress doesn't have an operational budget on a regular basis now?
Absolutely.
Why should they? It doesn't matter to Americans anymore. That's not even like a decent talking point. Like, we used it when it was convenient, and now the Democrats use it because it's convenient as a talking point about we need a budget. We don't have a budget, and it gets like tepid applause. Like, you pay attention to focus groups. It gets tepid applause. People are like, "Well, I don't have a budget." Like, why is that necessary? Why is that important? Well, the law says we should have one. That's kind of a weird law. Right? Like, people don't care about those things anymore. It's almost like I've been transplanted to this like alternative universe. But you have to be in tune to it and understand, we used to care about decorum and respect for the office, right? So this is the thing during the Clinton years, right? Respect for the office. I can't tell you how many times I heard that, right? You just put Rick Santorum on frickin' loop on respect for the office, okay? Same Rick Santorum that's an ardent Trump supporter now. So where's the respect for the office argument now? Well, it's not convenient anymore, right?
Right.
But we've done that in all areas of life. And when I say all areas of life, I mean all areas of life. So every Thanksgiving, what do we see? We see many posts about how to survive your Thanksgiving without getting mad at your relatives. How to have
Here's what to do Thanksgiving evening after you realize that you hate your family.
How to survive Thanksgiving with your mega family, right?
Right.
How many posts did we see that after the election? Like,
Yeah, not enough.
maybe you should skip out. Man,
Sorry.
I saw articles saying maybe you should just skip out on Thanksgiving this year if your family isn't. I'm like,
That
what?
drives me nuts. That drives me absolutely crazy.
Are you insane?
Well, and it goes back to, just tying it all into, kind of what brought us to do this specific podcast, Money and Power. And that is because, it's that idea of what are the three things that you're not supposed to talk about around the dinner table? Religion, politics, and money. And what do we talk about around this table?
Yeah.
Those three things. And unfortunately, I actually saw a really good post about this a while back. It's been circulating, but it was this idea of, it's kind of a chicken and the egg type thing. Like, which came first? Is it that we got to this point where we couldn't have rational discourse around these issues, and so we stopped talking about them, therefore making us worse at talking about them? Or were we told, we shouldn't talk about, religion and politics, and therefore we lost the ability to actually have rational discussions on those issues, even with close family members with which we disagree? Yeah. And I mean, frankly, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think that the answer is to stop talking about it. Yeah. I don't think that the answer is to shut up and avoid Thanksgiving. I think that the answer is to, put your big girl panties on and, have the conversations.
That's right.
Yeah.
It might be difficult, but guess what? There's family.
Yep.
And listen, I'll be perfectly frank. We're in this crap hole fest because we stopped having these conversations around our dinner table with our families.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
The you talk about a safe space, right? Like, I know that has a bad connotation, but in reality, the dinner table is the safe space. So don't talk about religion, politics, or money. Nobody gave my family that memo. So
add sex in there.
And sex. Nothing like hearing about your grandparents' sex life around the dinner table at a family gathering.
Wow.
But
you're right. There is nothing like that.
Yeah, there isn't. You can't come
Thank
back
God
for
for that.
Yeah, but
it was amazing. They couldn't conceive for the longest time, and then they.
Oh my gosh. But my point is that growing up, and Jeremiah can attest to this, growing up, we had all these conversations, You know, why are we pro-life? Well, what about this argument that I heard in school? And we would discuss it. And me being who I am, I would always take the devil's advocate role and make my mom very mad, but my dad loved it. But anyways, so it's just a matter of like, why can't we discuss these things? Why can't we formulate these opinions? So by the time that I got to college, I had already had these discussions. So when I'm hearing an argument from an atheist about a certain thing, apologetics wise, I mean, get out of here with that noise. Like,
right, you've built those muscles up. You know how to have that conversation.
Yeah. Or when I get someone saying, well, you know, I'm personally pro-life, but I vote for pro-abortion candidates. Like, okay, I can talk about that. I can debate that and discuss that and not go, oh, that's an excellent point. And which is sometimes code for, I have no freaking clue.
I have no clue what to say. Right.
Yeah. You know, my favorite conversation.
I'm out of ammo, and I just have to wait until you stop talking.
Yes,
that's right. My favorite conversation I remember having with my dad around the dinner table was, you know, here, son, this is how you own the libs. And you know, I never forgot that, and I've just been owning libs ever since.
Good for you. And we're so grateful. Thank you so much. See, I grew up with parents who have been married for over 50 years. And my dad was a McGovern Democrat, and I think actually McGovern might have been a little too conservative for him. And my mom was a dyed in the wool Republican, and they have I think there might have been twice that they voted for the same person. They both voted for Carter because mom just loved his overt Christianity, but they've never voted for the same person. They don't believe the same things, and they've been having conversations for 50 years about, you know, I don't want to paint them too rosy a picture, but they've been having conversations and sometimes arguments for 50 years about why they believe what they believe, and they're both been shaped and sharpened because of that. And so I got to grow up sitting at that table, and I'm really, really glad that I did.
But you also got a vantage point of, you know, the other side, whatever side you decided to come along, right? The other side isn't the arch enemy of the world because it's my mom or dad.
Right. No, that's exactly right.
Which is a whole nother, like, we never got that. Like, my parents were very synchronous in their viewpoints.
Well, but I will say this, you know, to that point, I think it brings up another interesting point, because I remember my parents having an argument, and I don't know what it was about. It certainly wasn't about politics at the time, but I remember them having an argument, and frankly, you know, an audible argument from the next room over. And I remember as a young kid asking my sister, you know, are parents going to get divorced? And that was probably something I saw on TV. I don't know. I mean, I know that was never mentioned in my family. You know, it was never uttered by my parents. You know, so there's nothing that would have actually brought me to believe that, other than, you know, I was just a young kid and I asked that question, and I remember my sister, you know, like, no, you know, fighting's normal. It happens. You know, they've got a disagreement and they're handling it like adults. And, you know, at the end of the day, they're going to, you know, sleep in the same bed and they're going to, you know, move on. And I think that's a great, you know, for you, Jay, I think that's a great testimony that you could see that for your parents. I mean, it's, you know, it's sad to say, but the fact that they've been together for 50 years, that's an anomaly now.
It is
like a huge anomaly. And so, I mean, it's just, these conversations need to be had. These conversations need to be had in marriage. They need to be happening with our kids. They need to be happening with our neighbors. And you know, I think, Nathan, you hit the nail right on the head, that if we're not having these conversations at the Thanksgiving dinner table, like, where in the world can we have them at?
Yeah. So like, that's why, like, my wife's family, those topics are off limits. So it's so different contrast, because I'm pretty vocal. You know, listen, I'll debate anybody. I'll talk about any subject, and they don't appreciate that as much as the podcast listening audience does. So,
I mean, at least we think they enjoy that. But
yeah, I know for a fact that my wife's family doesn't. So,
I learned pretty quickly that Nathan will debate anybody at any time about anything. Nathan, you want to tell the story about how we met, or
yeah.
should I?
So along the lines of decorum and how to do things, I don't want to say how to do things right, but
By the way, I'm just going to jump in for 2 seconds. This is one of my favorite stories. This is one of my favorite singular moments of the last 10 years of my life. And I tell the story often, and I can tell it unashamedly because, one, it's awesome, and two, I was at best a passive participant in this, and I am not the center of the story. So go ahead.
Well, you know what? Why don't you tell the story then, Jay? I'll give you some speaking time. Just go ahead.
All right. So Nathan and I are both a member of a private Facebook group that is a group of Christians. It was centered around a podcast, and I'm not even sure how I found it, to be honest with you. I was thinking about that this afternoon. But one day in 2016, early 2016, I believe, there was a thread that started about abortion. And I had tried very hard to have a kind of careful, nuanced, and humble series of posts. And Nathan and I, we didn't know each other. Nathan and I ended up kind of going back and forth, and it was getting heated, but it wasn't rude. Although there were times where if somebody could have heard what I was yelling while typing nice things, they would have never ordained me to any position of any kind ever. So in the midst of all this back and forth with this, completely this absolute Neanderthal of a Republican right-wing douchebag why would I want to spend any time with this guy? He pops off and says, "Hey, you live, it looks like you live in Washington, D.C. I said, "Yeah, I live on Capitol Hill." He said, "I'm in Arlington, Virginia for one night. Come and have dinner with me." And I instantly said, "Absolutely." And then I started to go, what just happened? What just happened? I mean, we had been going back and forth, and all of a sudden he said, "Yeah, come have dinner with me." And I said, "Sure." And I was surprised. And so I drove over to Arlington. I meet this guy, and we sat and talked for, we didn't talk until all hours of the night, but we sat and talked for an hour and a half. I don't think we had a single point of commonality other than we were both Christians. We both love the Lord. In terms of anything cultural or political or economical, we were on two different sides of the fence, but we just sat there and talked, and we had a meal together, and we got to know each other. And it was a profoundly impactful moment in my life. And in all honesty, it was a profoundly impactful moment in my development as a pastor. I was in seminary at the time, and I was serving as a deacon at an Anglican church on Capitol Hill. And so our congregation was made up of really smart, committed, zealous, and hardworking people who had moved from all over the country to work at think tanks or on the Hill or at NGOs, and from all sides of the aisle. We had people at our church from AEI and Brookings and Heritage and you name it. And it showed me a lot that night, Nathan, about how Christians can and should come together and have fellowship, and that the essentials of what our life is based on, what our identity is based on, can be shared and can come first, and we can celebrate those things. And the things that flow out of that, the outworking of that, we might come to different points of view. We might disagree on it, but that we can and we should, and we are empowered to, and we are called to be in fellowship with one another. And that's more than just grudging respect and not taking a swing at each other. It's actually having true fellowship. So I know I've said this before to you in private, but I'm glad I got the chance to say it in public, because it was really a profound moment for me.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, it was really a great moment for me too. And this all came about really out of when I decided to run for office, and I discovered something. I made a decision. Well, first of all, the office of city council where I live, it is a nonpartisan race. So you don't get an R or D next to your name. So it really, by necessity, forced me to talk to everybody. So I've been running political campaigns for a long time, and I've been involved in political campaigns since I was 11. And if it's an R&D, that means you just you don't go knock on everyone's doors. Because if someone is a 4 out of 4 D, then good luck, right? They're going to go and they're going to vote for the Democrat.
Right.
That's just, it doesn't matter who you are. And that's just the reality. But what
all you've done is remind them that there's an election, and you might have turned a non-voter. You might have weaponized a non-voter.
That's exactly right. It's really a cynical, but it is an effective way to run a campaign. And anybody who says anything different, they're lying to you. I talk to everybody. It doesn't matter. Okay. Well, good luck with it. I mean, you only have so much time to knock on doors. You must have a really, really small district like mine. So my district is about 1,000 doors, about a little under 2,000 voters, but 1,000 doors, give or take. And so I said, I'm going to knock on everybody's door and have conversations with them. And what I discovered was that people weren't in a box that I thought they were. So I go knock on this one lady's door. It's one of my favorite stories in politics. I go knock on this one lady's door. She is a 404. It's D. And I know for a fact that in 2012, we didn't knock on her door at all because I was in charge of walking doors in my precinct because she's a 404D. And so I get to the door, and the first question out of her mouth was, "What is your stance on gay marriage?" Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is about to go a very bad way, right? I'm at a doorstep of a 404D. She's wanting to know my take on gay marriage. This is not going to go well. So I said, and by the way, city council has very nothing to do there. Okay,
really? they're not deciding that at the municipal level now.
No. Like even on the abortion issue, like you could at least say, well, maybe there might be a Planned Parenthood clinic that might try to come into town or something. No, like there's just nothing. There's no way that you could. But I was like, and I said, you know what? I'll answer your question. I'll answer the question, and she's going to slam the door, and I'll be on my way. Like it'll be pretty quick. I said, I believe in traditional marriage, and I believe marriage between one man and one woman. And she looks at me, she's like, "Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. You have my vote." And I gave her my pamphlet, and I'm no lie, I stood at the doorstep. She closed the door, and I literally stood at the doorstep just like bewildered, like
what just happened?
What just happened? But it was a very good testament that you can't put people in boxes. But also, it's really easy to have a caustic relationship with somebody through a screen. But when you meet them face to face, it changes the whole tenor. And I will say from that point, Jay, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from that point, we really haven't clashed that much online. And I think it's because I've met you face to face and I know your heart. Mm-hmm. And I know that you're not this, some kind of, monster or anything like that. But going back, kind of tying it back to the leadership stuff, like I was able to look at the good. So I was able to, rejoice with you, like when you adopted your son, right? And I was able to, come, pray with you during times of, hey, are we going to move to North Carolina? Like when you're asking for prayer and stuff like that, like come alongside you.
Right.
And I think about, what a missed opportunity that would have been, right? If I had just shut you off, what a missed opportunity. I wouldn't have been able to participate in the rejoicing over your son. I would not have been able to participate in the seeking of God's will for your life and going to North Carolina. Like all these things I could have missed out with, but all that was solved. And honestly, it wasn't solved through prayer or Bible reading or going to church. It was solved by, you know what? I'd like to buy you some pizza.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's all it was. It was the simplest thing in the world. And this is where, I mean, I come at this. I'm a pastor now. But I get paid to say things like this. But I come at this from a perspective of a Christian worldview that says, yes, we are supposed to do things like this. We are absolutely supposed to do things like this. And often it does come from prayer, or often it does come from shared corporate worship. But it doesn't have to. We can just be, yeah, let's go get a slice and talk. And that's the thing that's transferable then to the wider world. And that's the thing that we need to, as Christians, not only embrace but model for the rest of the world. And it just, yeah, what a missed opportunity it would have been, because you would have then remained just the avatar on the screen who I had nothing in common with. And I hope that you believe me. I really do tell that story very often, and it really was it's one of my happiest moments of the last couple of years, because yeah, we haven't clashed that much online. I know where we disagree, and I really enjoy seeing your take on things, and I really enjoy little glimpses into your life, and I like seeing. I have, I hate Disney. I just can't. now that might get me kicked off the podcast. I understand that.
Those are fighting words.
Oh, I know, but but that's the thing. I can't stand Disney, but I love watching you and your wife and your family take such joy in spending that time together. And I would have never gotten to appreciate that. And that's just one small example.
We're going next year over Thanksgiving. You guys are more than welcome to come down, hang out with us.
We have my wife's best friend works at Disney, and so every time we go down there, we get free whatever the park hopper thing is. And so I've done so much Disney in the last 2 years. I can't do it anymore.
Wait, so how do we get in on that deal?
I know, right? They only get so many passes. So, all right. So it was great having you on to talk about that, and thank you for sharing that. And know, everyone in the podcast audience, I did not pay him to say all those nice things about me. But
yeah, our mom did, but
that's right. I actually had my shady lawyer do it, so I didn't have to do it directly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Full circle. Just start calling him Stormy Traylor.
Oh.
Thanks. Okay. If you didn't give me a reason in the first segment, you've now given me another reason. Edit point, note to self: don't tell my mom about this podcast.
Don't share it on Jay's timeline.
No.
Well, you know what? It is kind of late. We kind of record late at night. We are recording on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday. But you know what really keeps the pep in our step, as it were? Strikeforce Energy. As always, this episode is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. You can use the coupon code MAP for 20% off all orders at strikeforceenergy.com. Go to Strikeforce Energy for all your wonderful energy needs. Can't speak enough for it. All right. Feedback. We got some feedback from a pretty prominent person. Last episode, we talked about Christians in politics, and I can only assume that this was in response to our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So Trey Gowdy, U.S. representative, sent into the podcast. I mean, he had to send it through an official publication, so it wasn't direct to us, but like you said, we know the intent. Yep. He said this quote. He says, "Are you a believer who happens to be interested in the political process, or are you a Republican or Democrat who happens to go to church? What is the source of your identity?"
Couldn't have said it better ourselves.
That's good.
Thank you, Trey Gowdy, for listening.
Yeah, friend of the podcast.
Friend of the pod.
Yeah. Friend of the podcast, Trey Gotti.
Yeah, so that was we really appreciated that quote, and it's good stuff. Something definitely to think about. I think it fits right into what we're talking about. And Jay, you mentioned having understanding that we're all brothers and sisters in Christ, and a lot of these issues are not even some of these issues aren't even secondary and tertiary issues. They're so peripheral to the main issue that we get ourselves all wrapped up in the wrong thing sometimes.
We got to keep the main thing the main thing. We did get some feedback. We posted on the Facebook page that Jay was going to be joining, and we did get some questions. So
yeah, so people hit us up on Facebook at Money Power Pod. You can hit us up there, or on Twitter or Instagram at Money Power Pod. So we'd love to hear your comments and feedback for next week. But yeah, in response to our post about Jay joining us, some guy named Rob Johnson. I don't know who that is, but he had a list of questions. I don't even know if I think we should just skip that. That's not that important. No, he said, how are you going to fill my shoes? He also said, why should all drugs be legal? He also said, what's the capital of Kansas? And then he said, don't screw it up either. 20 episodes of perfection, no pressure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about that. Jay's joining us for our 20th episode. That's kind of exciting. See, Mom, I told you we could do it. 20 episodes.
Yeah, see, Rob, I told you we could do it.
yeah, exactly. We'll show you who the true believers are. Do you want to answer any of those questions, or you just want to pass? You
Who, me?
pass them.
It's just Rob. It's just Rob.
Oh no, I'll take them. Hey, and then I have a question of my own.
Sure.
So, let me see. Hit me up with those again. What's the first one?
All right. How are you going to fill his shoes?
Easily 2.
Why should all drugs be legal?
Why should all drugs be legal? I'm not sure that I ever said that all drugs should be legal. Okay, I don't want to give a.
So the answer is all drugs shouldn't be legal. Gotcha.
All drugs shouldn't be legal. Number 3.
Next, what's the capital of Kansas?
No idea. It doesn't matter. It's in the middle of the country. Number 4.
Yeah, a bunch of deplorables over there.
Well, I have to maintain my status as a coastal elite.
That's true.
There you go.
That's
Fair
true.
enough. Very good. Very good. Yeah. So
And
basically
my question-
pushing Rob to his actual place on this podcast is we don't really care. Move on.
And my question for Rob is, Rob, are you familiar with who Wally Pipp is? He's the guy who was in the batting order before. Oh shit! I ruined the joke. Google Wally Pipp, Rob. I can't believe I tanked my own joke.
I would say we do it over and then we could just edit together. But the problem is Rob does the editing. So there's no way that he would edit that
There's
favorably.
No way he will.
There's also no way that he would actually find the right edit point and do it. So, all right. So we got some other rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, go.
All right. Is the church in America Episcopal beholden to the crown?
Okay. Serious answer. I am not an Episcopalian priest. I am a priest in the Anglican Church of North America. It's 2 different things that look similar from the outside, but have very differing points of view in terms of what is central to the gospel.
So take that, Tony Vance. Owned. Next.
Owned.
Boom.
Next.
Boom. With a capital P. All right. Do you wear underwear under your robe?
Come to church and find out. Next.
Can you get flashy tassels?
Can I get flashy tassels? Well, that's now my name instead of Stormy Traylor. Next.
All right. Flashy tassel. All right.
And by the way, I've been Googling in the background, and because I just locked up on the name. Wally Pipp was the professional baseball player who played first base and then went out with an injury and was replaced by some schmo that nobody had ever heard of named Lou Gehrig. And then Lou Gehrig went on to have the longest consecutive streak of games played in Major League history at that point, and Wally Pipp never played again.
Got it. So you're saying Rob Johnson is the Wally Pipp of this podcast?
I think you said that, not me.
So I didn't get the reference, but I knew where you were going with it, and it's really hard to say well played when it wasn't well played. But
It wasn't at all. See, feels good, Rob.
Yeah. Yep. No danger there. All right. So Kevin Small says, how do liberal Christians justify their support for pro-abortion candidates?
Sure. That's a question that I ask myself a lot. I don't think that, and I'll try to keep this brief before I start preaching. As a Christian, we are first and foremost citizens of the kingdom of heaven. We are citizens of the kingdom of God. We are here as sojourners and exiles. I end up reading First Peter a lot because I think it's the best way to think about how Christians live in the modern world. And if, as a Christian, if you can completely and wholly endorse the platform of either of the two political parties in this country, then I'm not sure that you've thought it through well enough. And so there's just too many pro-life candidates who don't seem to care about any of the other things that I think the Bible calls Christians to care about. There are too many who don't seem to care about taking care of the widows and orphans. There's too many who don't seem to care about how can I as a politically liberal Christian, how can I vote for a candidate who's pro-abortion? Because taken on balance, it's not, and this is actually the thread that Nathan and I got into it about. It's not always the central issue that I'm going to vote on. It's just not. And to say more than that would be a too long of a conversation, I think. And I don't say that lightly.
No, I think it's a fair answer and pretty succinct for the topic at hand. So well done.
I think it would be good when we have the topic when we talk about abortion on the show, have Jay back.
Yeah, I think so.
That would be good. All right, that's all I have on that feedback slate as far as the questions. Any other feedback? All right.
Follow us at MoneyPowerPod. You can email us moneypowerpod@gmail.com. And as always, we would love for you to like us, review us, and share us on any platforms that you are on. So thank you very much.
All right. So now we come to the wonderful part of the show, our wives' favorite part of the show, the ending. It's called Parting Shots. All right. Jeremiah.
All right. So I'm going to try to keep this short, but this has been a pet peeve of mine just very recently. Are you guys, are either of you familiar with these recent companies that have popped up in some major metros across the country that do technically they call them shared mobility devices or electric scooters for rent? Have
Yes.
you guys seen some of those popping
Yes.
up? It's becoming the trend. We live north of Columbus here in Ohio, but about an hour north of Columbus. But I commute down to Columbus a couple days a week for work, and they've just been popping up all over. It's a really interesting model. There's an app. You scan the scooter with your phone. It unlocks it. It's $1 to start. It's like 15 cents a minute after that, and you can pretty much take them anywhere in the city. And it's all GPS located, and then you just lock it when you're done, and it's all paid through the app, and it's all secure. And the companies just take the risk of the fact that there's just scooters on the sidewalk, and but it's GPS located, so if someone steals it, et cetera, et cetera. So they've just been blowing up. At one point there was 3 different companies in Columbus that were sprouting up, and just every day I'm walking down. I work in downtown Columbus, and there's just people riding around on these scooters. So of course Columbus
now,
City. Go ahead.
Clarify. Is this like a scooter, like I'm at Disney World kind of scooter, or is this like a
No, it's not a
moped?
Rascal.
No,
It's like a razor scooter.
Yeah.
It's a little skateboard with a little handle.
Yeah.
But it's motorized.
Yeah, it is. It is a motorized razor scooter. Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a sit-in Walmart scooter, but or a moped. But so Columbus has come in and said that they need to regulate this. So one of my buddies posted on Twitter. He said this: sad that electric scooters are going through the same local government shakedown. 1, innovative company comes to town. 2, people love it. 3, government officials, aka fun police, want to get their cut. 4, government threatens to ban them. 5, heavy regulations come. 6, fun thing becomes less fun. And so that was kind of prophetic because that was a couple weeks ago. And just yesterday, the city of Columbus put in regulations on these. Listen, first and foremost, I am not someone that is just anti-regulation for the sake of being anti-regulation. But this is what they're doing here, while maybe well-intentioned, I'm not so sure, is ridiculous. So some of them are common sense, like you can't park the scooters in the middle of the street. That's obvious, but it's been self-regulated, and the company has put protections in place that doesn't happen. Riders have to obey all laws and local regulations, and that's obvious, and that's on the rider, and that's been self-regulated. I'm keeping this short because there's this whole long list of probably about a dozen regulations. But a couple that are specifically, so they've got to get a permit. There can only be 8 companies in the whole city with a maximum of 500 devices per company, which, that may or may not be reasonable for a city the size of Columbus. They've got to be educated on reasonable laws, blah, blah, blah. Where is it? Companies offering shared mobility devices must put in place access to the service for those without credit cards. So they have to offer a cash option for an app-based device. So that plus there's regulations on the speed. Some of that makes sense. It's 15 miles an hour. But we've seen this with Uber. We've seen this with other, sharing economy type things, where when the government puts in regulations, they're very strict. So if some of these scooters go 16 miles per hour, they're going to crack down on it, and they're going to ensure that these companies obey the specific letter of the law as it relates to these regulations. And a lot of these companies have to take all of their fleet off of the market to fit it to fit these regulations. Plus the cash thing, I have no idea how they're going to do that. I don't know what purpose that serves. My frustration is that Columbus, like a lot of large cities, has a problem with transportation, has a problem with parking, has a problem with a lot of these issues that most major cities have an issue with. And every time the government tries to fix it, whether it be with a bus system, whatever, increase funding, increase taxes, increase this, increase regulations, it doesn't end up actually fixing the problem. This is a reasonable accommodation, I'd say similar to Uber, that comes in, it fixes an actual problem, not a perceived problem, but the government doesn't get a cut of it, and so they've got their panties in a wad. So that's my parting shot. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I apologize if it's too localized and everyone's just rolling their eyes during this, but it's been a real frustration for me and some of my colleagues. But yeah, government being the fun police, and 90% of these regulations are already happening self-regulated by the companies, and the other 10% I think are overreach.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I don't know. It's just a rant. Call it a pet peeve. I don't know where that fits in the parting shots archive, but yeah, Columbus, get your crap together. And I'd be interested to see. I haven't really looked into it. How other cities are handling this issue because they're.
Oh, I can speak to that poorly. They're all. Most of them are dealing with it the same way that Columbus is. I've read articles about. This was a massive problem in San Francisco, which has, such a terrible series of problems with its infrastructure and kind of its center city area.
Yeah.
And so all of the San Francisco NIMBYs were just, oh no, we can't have that here. Oh, it's going to destroy the beauty of the city. Oh, it's just terrible. Well, San Francisco, like LA, like New York, like Atlanta, like DC, like Columbus, has terrible traffic. I don't know of a single metropolitan area that says, nope, no traffic here. They all have terrible traffic because there are too many cars on the road. And so if the government isn't going to be able to do a good job of alleviating traffic, then private enterprise is going to come in and go, hey, we have an idea. We found this space and we can make some money at it. And that's absolutely fine with me. I am not. Now, I guarantee you, I'm going to be more for government regulations than you guys are, but I'm not pro-regulation just for the sake of being pro-regulation. And these regulations are stupid because if you can alleviate just a little bit of car traffic by having more scooter traffic, terrific, awesome. Because unlike most big cities in Europe, I don't know of any city in this country that has done a really fine and credible job of having a robust public transit system. We just can't do it for some reason, and I'm not sure why, and I don't know enough about it to know why.
Well, but, and let me add this to it too. There's been many cities across the United States that have spent a ton of money trying to put in bike paths and bike lanes and to encourage this type of thing. It's not this specifically, but to encourage bike traffic, bicycle traffic, and
I think that's great.
And so,
and more should do it.
But the thing is, the difference is this is businesses finding a solution to a problem, whereas the bike paths are often trying to find a solution, or trying to fit their solution into the problem. And so what ends up happening, at least in Columbus, is very few people actually use the bike paths. Very few people actually use, in comparison to the money spent, very few people actually use the bike lanes. Now, with these companies, it's actually a use for the multi-million-dollar projects of putting in bike lanes. They're actually using the bike lanes and using the bike paths effectively that they wouldn't have elsewhere. And so, even that it's a piece of the puzzle that's interesting. That's just very very interesting to see how it all flesh out. But yeah,
government always wants their cut. All right, my parting shot is my biggest pet peeve when my brother has 20-minute parting shots.
It's the worst.
It is the worst.
Hate that guy.
Yeah,
Jeremiah's worse than Rob Johnson. That's that guy.
No, I really don't have a parting shot, so I don't know what to tell you. Football's coming back. Really excited. Can't wait. I'll be watching the Nebraska game at 8 o'clock on Saturday night. And
Nathan, are you more college or pro?
College.
Yeah, gotcha.
College. Although I only bet on pro.
Growing up in the Northeast, it's not a college sports area, and so we never cared about it because it's pro sports up there.
Yeah.
And so when I moved down to North Carolina, the first question people asked me, well, what team are you going to support? I was like, what are you talking about? You mean the Panthers or what are we talking about here? And they said, no. Are you for University of Carolina? Or are you for NC State? I was like, who are they and what do they do?
Then you also have Duke, right? So it's like,
yes, but not even. But if you vocalize that you support Duke around here, then you get two different fan bases mad at you. So nobody wants to talk about that.
Fair. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm definitely more college as far as watching. But I do Dynasty Fantasy Football, and I may drop the occasional dime on a game or two. But that's the extent of it. Because I lived, it was opposite, right? So I lived in Nebraska growing up in my formative years, and there's no pro team there. So so for that reason, if I had to pick a team at gunpoint, it'd be the Denver Broncos. But, I'm more of just, I enjoy watching football. So if it's on, I'll watch it. All right, Jay, what's your parting shot?
I have two parting shots. My first one is about Enneagram, and specifically Enneagram in the church. I don't know if I assume both of you know what Enneagram is. It's a personality test, and I tend to have a pretty kind of eye-rolling approach to most personality tests. They're fine. I mean, they're fine. If you want to learn more about yourself, take this test, but please take it with a grain of salt. And I've seen too many times even in the church when people will, and it used to be Myers-Briggs, but it seems to have moved on to Enneagram, and people will come up, oh, well, I'm a 3 and you're a 8, so I'm not, I'm not even sure that you can be my pastor. I don't know if I could be pastored by an 8. Oh, well, fantastic. There's another church down the street. Beat it. So, Christians, stop acting like Enneagram deserves a place in the back of your Bible.
Yeah. So my whole approach to that has always been, show me who your friends are and I'll show you your future. And so basically I saw every one of my progressive Christian friends get on the Enneagram track, and I knew that it was just something I needed to stay away from.
So that was parting shot number 1. Parting shot number 2 is this. Parting shot is a hot take against myself. I am very, very disappointed, and I mean this sincerely. I'm very disappointed that I managed to make it through Nathan's entire news bit without ever once employing the phrase Chinese takeout. Good night, everybody.
On that note, there's just nothing else to say. Oh, God bless it. For Jeremiah Martin, for Jay Traylor, you know what? Even for Rob Johnson, even decided to only show up in feedback. I am Nathan Martin, saying good night and good luck.
Yeah. There's setups, there's long setups, and then there's that. That's really the long game there. So I appreciate that.
I got the money in the pile. Yeah. Once you get a little, they just wanna take you down, cuz we've been going hard for too long. Can't get enough, what is you on?